Hey, how's it going, everyone? Just kind of waiting for everyone to trickle in. I'd like to welcome everybody to our July seismic activity. You're at Startups, Start Your Engines, Lessons Learned, and Narwhal Kickoff. It's going to be great. We love an active chat. So if you guys want to drop your LinkedIn addresses in there and everybody can connect. Also, I'll be monitoring the chat. So if some great questions come up, I can kind of interrupt everybody and say, hey, we got a great question. So feel free. Like I said, we love an active chat. So I've already recognized a lot of names and, faces and everything. So great to see you all. I'll go ahead and introduce you to Rock, Paper, Scissors' Chief Strategy Officer, Tristra New Year Yeager. She's got 20 years of writing, editing, research experience, and a PhD to her name. No big deal. She is the big brain here at RPS and the one that everybody goes to. Well, myself, the one I go to for all things strategy involved with our PR campaign. So take it away, Tristra.
Sorry, I needed a second there to get off mute to get over my Midwestern embarrassment after that glowing introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to talk to you today about our Narwhal competition. And first, I want to make sure everybody understands how we're going to do this. We're going to have some quick chats with our 3 former winners. Then we're going to talk to Bill Campbell, who will help us think a little bit more from the sort of perspective of a startup advisor, how to approach all this fun stuff. And last but not least, we're going to have a deep dive from Eleanor into the application process, which is not onerous, is not scary. If any of you know RPS, you know we're a pretty friendly, caring, fun-loving group, and we like to keep our startup competitions the same way. So real fast, our past winners that have joined us today are Jacquelle Horton of Fave, Jessica Powell of Audioshake, and Xann Schwinn of Biiah, all very different companies and I'm sure they're gonna have some great advice to give folks in all sorts of different parts of the music tech space. So first, I'm gonna give you a 1-minute overview about our pitch competitions and what to expect this year. So in 2023, Music Tectonics will be hosting our 4th annual Swimming with Narwhals Startup Pitch Competition. This is an opportunity to showcase your company across the music tech ecosystem in front of some of the biggest decision makers in the industry in a wonderfully friendly, networking friendly, warm environment that's a lot of fun. And it's by the beach. People are a little bit more relaxed. It tends to be a somewhat less straight-laced and uptight vibe, if I may be so bold. So our applications for 2023 went live today. And Eleanor, as I mentioned, will be sharing more details about this year's competition at the end of this event. So please stick around. Please get ready to take notes, mental or otherwise. All right, so now we get to have a few really fun conversations. So first up, I'd like to welcome Jessica Powell of Audioshake. I'll introduce you, and Jessica, if I miss anything important, please let folks know. But you're CEO and co-founder of Audioshake, which uses AI to separate music and other audio for new uses across the music and entertainment industries. It's been called the cleanest STEM separation tech by DJ Mag, one of those cool things that music tech nerds can really appreciate. Audioshake is used widely across the music industry, from major labels and indies to publishers and artists. And one thing I've really loved about watching Audioshake and Jessica's journey is the incredible stories that you've built around this product that could seem just well, what is that? What does it do? It just does a thing. You've really built out the use cases and help people imagine how STEMs could change the music industry. So I'm hoping you can share some of your lessons and insights today. So let's start out with that, Jessica. If you were in the Zoom audience, so to speak, today and preparing for this competition or for any pitch competition, what advice would you give startup founders or other friends of startups?
In relation to the contest, or just
let's start specifically, yeah, with getting ready for something like a pitch competition. What's been some of the most helpful insights that could be psychological or just technical that you've found over the years? Because you're great at pitching.
Oh, thank you. it's funny because I hate public speaking. So it's always, it's a funny thing to hear. Thank you. I think, look, I think whether in pitching or marketing, communicating generally, you have to keep it simple, because no one will ever understand your product to the degree that you understand it. Nor should consumers or customers, if it's B2B, have to understand all the ins and outs. And so I think that always simplifying it and trying to make sure that you can start from sort of like the tagline level of like what your product is doing and what problem it solves. And then build like, and then you can go deeper, right? But you kind of have to get people on board from the start and get them interested. And I think sometimes what happens, particularly if you're coming at things from a technical angle, or that's what that's the side you've come up on, which a lot of music tech people have. We kind of go right to the solution and right to the product. And I think you need to actually start with the story and paint the larger picture first.
That's great. So let's talk for a second about your story or Audioshake's story. What's some general advice that you don't often hear for startup founders who are maybe at an early stage? Maybe you have some seed funding or you're even pre-seed. What are the kind of things that you wish you had known at that stage of your journey?
Generally, again, this is generally or contest wise?
Yeah, go generally for a sec here.
Yeah, and I'd be interested if you end up asking the same question to the other folks, and be interesting to hear Bill's take too, because I feel like he gets a different flavor of it, but probably has seen this even more. I think that probably one of the most time-consuming things that I'm smarter about now that I wasn't when we started, was like, I think like anything, right? Again, whether you're talking about marketing or communication or sales or raising money, like you have to know your audience, right? And because I had done marketing before, like if you'd thrown a marketing type challenge in front of me, I would have immediately known that, like intuitively. I wouldn't even have thought about that. I know how to segment, right, my audience. But when I went to fundraise, I didn't think about that at all. And instead I went and I was just like, well, I'm in the Valley and I was at a big tech company before. And so I know these VCs and therefore I should go to these VCs. It was a huge waste of time, right? And that like a lot of the really big VCs in the Valley hate music, like hate music because they feel like they were burned by it in the past. And it doesn't matter if they like you, they're just like, I'm just throwing money into the wind. So I'm not going to invest in this. The number of VCs that were just like, if you had done anything but music, but we can't get behind this. And so at first I was, that was kind of just, and it's discouraging. Like fundraising is terrible. Even when it's going well, it's terrible because at least just feels like a distraction. And so what I did like that first time, what I should have done and what I would tell any founder is like, sit down and actually figure out where there's the fit, like figure out who's going to fund you and who's open to that story and who's funded those kinds of companies before, ask other startup founders. And you're going to, at a minimum, you're just going to have better conversations. Even if someone decides not to fund you, you might get really useful feedback. You'll feel more momentum, I think, or they'll point out really useful things that you haven't thought about, like flaws in your story or potential product questions that you hadn't thought about. Like, it's a much more productive conversation, regardless of where it goes on the funding side. So I think that was probably, in addition to just dumb admin stuff that I didn't know how to do when we first started, like probably the most time consuming and like things that I learned by doing.
That's really, really great advice. Let's go back to the music Tectonics context and talk a little bit about the audience there. As you know, you won the Narwhal competition. I'm curious what the experience was like during the competition, and then what kind of business do you feel like that the whole competition process helped you do at Music Tectonics?
So I would say, we were going to go to Tectonics anyway. I'd heard really good things about the conference. I also am a sucker for the beach. So I feel like I'd already heard good things, but I was also like, and it's at the beach. And I'm in San Francisco and it's cold and foggy all the time. So it just seemed like the perfect place to go. And I already knew some startups that were going. So it all just kind of seemed like a natural place to be. I also saw, maybe this is a terrible thing to say, Trisha, but I also saw that it was like, if you were accepted, if you got to present, then you got the registration for free. And since I'm like the kind of person that will like do multiple rounds at Costco to get the samples, like I was just like, oh, free. We're just like, let me see if I can do this. And I just also generally felt, again, like I really hate public speaking. And so I try and make myself do it sometimes. So it was like a combination of all those things where I was like, I'm going to apply to this. It was a super easy process, and very friendly. And, when we got there, again, very, very straightforward. You just got up, you did your thing. I actually thought it was great compared to some other ones I've done. Like we did South by Southwest, and they have this buzzer, and you would just see like team after team, literally 3 words from their ending, just get like kind of brutally cut off. And I understand it when you have like huge, like time constraints and tons of teams pitching, but I just felt like it was a much friendlier, like low key kind of thing. Which is not to say that you can go over, but like no one's going to cut you off in those, like when you have a sentence left. I also thought it was really useful, like being up on stage, right? When we started, we were all coming from tech, not from the music industry. We didn't know many people in music at all. And so being able to get in front of a bunch of music people is really valuable, right? Being able to describe like your product and everything. And then people come up to you afterwards. And I think that, I stayed in touch with some of the startups that were part of my cohort, and they all felt very similar. Like it was actually really positive for them to be able to get up and pitch and then have people come afterwards. So all in all, it was a really great experience. And I really loved also that it was a mix of startups and, like DSPs and other kinds of companies.
Wonderful. That's like that's such great feedback. And I'm really, really encouraged to hear you had such a great experience. Thank you so much, Jessica. I know you're in a complicated time zone, so I really appreciate you making the time for us. I would love to now bring on Xann Schwinn of Biiah. Where is Xann?
Hi, I'm here.
Hey, there she is. Hello, Xann. Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Hi. So I'm gonna let me introduce Xann for a second to everybody. Xann is a full stack strategist, which sounds, I love that. That sounds amazing. A seasoned entrepreneur, and is currently co-founder and CEO of Biiah, the world's first platform making singing for health accessible to the masses, which as a singer is super close to my heart, and I love it. I love singing for health. It is indeed like great exercise and great for your heart and soul. So excited to talk to you some more, Xann. So I'd love to go through basically a similar set of questions with you, Xann, and hear a bit more specifically about your experience as a founder. A platform like this while it makes total sense to a vocalist or a music maker, it may be a little bit more complicated to explain to people outside of that world. How did you go about doing that?
I would say it's kind of the opposite. Like, I think that people
Really?
who are like laymen, like who just like sing casually, get it right away. And it's only people within the music industry that are like, but why would anybody want to sing? And so actually this competition itself.
Oh
yeah,
man, I'm mad on behalf of all like singing people here. That's crazy. It's so interesting. Okay, sorry, go on.
No, not at all. So, I mean, it's kind of the reason why I wanted to do this competition in the first place. We were a pre-seed business. We'd raised a bunch of money at that stage, but we were kind of in a transformational period. And I really wanted to have some practice speaking to music industry. I think, this industry is so globally connected and really powerful and profound, but I hadn't yet figured out the way to tell the story that made sense to people within this industry. Like, it made a lot of sense to me, and it made a lot of sense to people that we were speaking to that were potential users. But as far as like big brand partners or potential, other music industry connections, I hadn't yet figured out the sort of profound problem element that people would understand. Like, I was too deep in it. I was talking, the stories are different within those contexts. And I think that this competition gave me an opportunity to try to like reweave that story. Now we've gotten to the place, eventually you want a story that can kind of work for everyone. And for me, it took years, every time we pivoted the business a little bit or, adjusted a product or launched a new product, we would kind of adjust a little bit. And so, after you've gotten several years of practice, inherently a story will be easier to tell. But I really felt like this competition itself was a really pivotal moment for me, because in the several rounds I was able to sort of refine and refine amongst, you know, the narwhals thing. Like, it really felt like everybody was open and gave really great suggestions, and there was always really great conversation happening within the chat. And when I did it, it was in the metaverse, and so that also like creates a little bit of an inherently interesting environment to do something like this in. So
that's a specific place. I remember that year was a little different. And how did you get any interesting feedback or inspiration based on that unusual context? Was that helpful, did you feel, in landing on what is now your story?
Yeah, super helpful. I mean, I felt like the feedback they get, I mean, I would, if I was going to give advice to any founder in any industry, like, pitch as much as you humanly possibly can. The more that you tell your story to potential users, to people, to your family, to your friends, to your grandmother, to your aunts and uncles, to people who don't understand technology, who still have flip phones, who don't own email addresses, like, the more that you can practice your story so that it makes sense for everybody, people who are also very, very technical, educators, having them understand. Eventually, you know, it's an iterative process. It's like developing a product. You know, if you can just kind of tweak and tweak and tweak until you've got that story that can really be profound for everyone. Oftentimes it just takes time to get there. And I feel like this competition enabled me to get that practice that I needed, speaking directly to my industry.
And he's curious, and you know, maybe it's hard to do a complete A/B comparison, but what were some of the basic elements you started out with, and where did you end up after all of this practice refining your pitch?
It's like my mind of like trying to unpick like 4 years of iterations.
That's a tough one. I should
hundreds,
like that's
hundreds
one of those
and
ones you need
hundreds
to like think about for a couple days or something. But how did the basic outlines change? Like, how the way you framed the problem, for example? Okay, Jason's helping me out here. He's like, shorter question, what was the profound problem?
So the profound problem is that, like, society generally, people on a day-to-day basis feel like they can or can't sing, and if they can't sing, they shouldn't sing. But singing is an intrinsic part of the human experience. It's part of our toolkit. It's how we engage. It's how, you know, we sing, our caregivers sing to us, kids sing to other kids. Like, it's how we've told stories for hundreds of thousands of years. And so at the end of the day, it's a communication tool. I think lots of us here would have experienced, you know, profound kumbaya moments where you're singing a really moving hymn in church, you know, having so much fun with your friends at karaoke, sports games, chanting with 100,000 other people in a stadium. And yet there's this like whole generation of people that feels like, and actually I think the problem kind of transcends age and experience. It's this idea of like, I must sound like this to engage, and actually everyone can sing. Everyone has the power for this. And so we wanted to create something that enabled people to find confidence in their own unique voices, whatever that voice sounds like. And there was, you know, I think that getting to that point in the story, just it's hard for me. The reason why I like had that really long pause is just because there were so many little tweaks that happened kind of along the way to get us to that point. And the examples, I think, are really important for me because singing is such a, and music making generally is such a deeply emotional thing for people. It's very vulnerable. A lot of people feel very embarrassed. And so anytime that I talk about our product or myself, you know, a singing product, people instantly, I mean, 80% of people that I talk to on a weekly basis will be like, okay, but don't make me sing. As if like on a Zoom business meeting, I'm going to be like, oh, well, yeah, I run a singing product. So could you just sing to me a little bit?
So advice for when you're talking to investors, don't make them sing.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. I love it. This is so helpful, Xann. We have a few more minutes and I want to make sure we talk specifically about music tectonics. Again, your year was a year unlike any other. But I'm curious how winning Narwhals or the experience of participating in the competition, you sort of touched on that, but like how was the overall conference impacted where Biiah ended up?
Well, I think connecting to the industry, especially since Narwhals is one of these, you're 1 degree of separation from literally everyone in the industry, that being that niche can have ripple effects that go on for years and years and years. I mean, I just think the community aspect in and of itself, you know, allowing yourself to be able to socialize with other startup founders within the music industry, just as an experience itself is great. I think being able to pitch in an environment that's friendly rather than, you know, really, really intense, but still has that structure where you can grow and you can learn is important. And then obviously winning like press is always helpful for all things. So
we like to think so, but it's great to hear that from you too. All right, we got in one last minute. Is there any general piece of advice that you would love to share with other founders or people who were when you first jumped into the swimming with narwhals pool? Any little bit of wisdom, small tip, ideas that you want to share?
Yeah, I think, you know, as it was kind of mentioned in the first conversation, you know, pitching to angels and VCs for funding as a music tech company can inherently have its own blockers. You know, there are red flags around licensing and all of these different areas. And I think that there are giants that have come before us as startup founders. You know, startup is no longer new. And so I encourage you to reach out to other people within the industry, asking them about how they overcome some of those questions that happen, not just in funding conversations, but in partnership conversations, because I know that it can be a little bit trickier to be a music tech founder. It's hard enough being a founder in and of itself, but within this space, I would lean on your community. I would use this as an opportunity to connect with other founders, go for coffee, talk about the challenges that you've had and learn from each other. Because for me, that's been the most helpful part of my journey as a startup founder within this space. And I think that this community is a really great place to build that for yourself and an opportunity for you to find those connections.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. So next, we're going to talk to Jacquelle Horton of Fave.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, Fave. We got some Fave stands.
That's great.
Hey, Jacquelle. So it's great to have you here again. And I'm eager to hear about what you've been up to and how Narwhals has impacted Fave. But first, I'm going to introduce you to those who don't know Jacquelle. She is the founder of Fave, as I just mentioned. And Fave is a platform dedicated to empowering superfans with partnerships and investments across the biggest entertainment companies and artists in the world. In addition to winning the Music Tectonics Competition, as her first public mention of Fave, she was named to the Forbes under 30 under 30 list. Oh my God, sorry. Fast Company's World's Most Innovative Companies of 2022, and most recently, the Most Pioneering Media Businesswoman of 2023. Wow, that is quite a list of accolades. So I'm really curious. You volunteered, you know, just so the folks here with us have a little background. You volunteered to share some of the things you've been facing as a founder recently, and I'm going to ask a pretty open-ended question about that. What's been going on, and what would you like to share with other startup founders so that they can sort of know what they're facing, know what challenges may lay ahead, and how to cope with those challenges?
Yeah. So hi, everybody. Super glad to be here. And you might be alluding to me saying like, hey, if you want to talk about like funding or the economy and the toughness, like I'm game for it. So don't be shocked.
Feel free to ask questions too in the chat, everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've been so open and transparent about this because our story went from, you know, funding millions, like oversubscribed rounds, like all of these amazing things, to us being in this new operational model where we can't just say, oh yeah, it's okay, well, we'll be able to raise it, you know, in 6 months and like close the A and just get this the same way that we did last time, but instead truly operate as if you will be gone in 3 months if you don't excel in exactly the strategy that you have. And I think while like undoubtedly the toughest thing that I think a lot of us have been going through, to kind of wade through this period in this new way that we couldn't really anticipate before and have to quickly adjust to survive. It has been the best thing that has happened because we were forced quickly. And by the way, I'm saying we now, when before I would say I, Fave, this, because you felt so alone during this period that it was just you going through this. And hearing other founders and everything, I will plus one that was the biggest weight off of my shoulders to go, okay, wait, it's not just us, you're also dealing with this. So it was comforting, I guess. But it really showed us that we have to focus. We have to take the wealth of opportunity that we have and just hone in on one. And most of all, you have to believe in what you have, because this was a dire enough situation that if this wasn't worth it to continue, or this idea like wasn't really like hitting it with users, or people weren't really buying it, it was like you couldn't survive, you couldn't give up. But you had to make sure that you as a founder and your users and your partners and everything truly believed in this, so that it was worth it to fight through everything. And I think doing that, having that fight, seeing us continue that fight, and remain focused on what we actually think will deliver among everything, was like the best thing that we could do. So super tough time, but I'm super grateful for it as well.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, Jacquelle, about not doing it alone and not realizing that it ain't you. There are much bigger forces at play, and I think there's the myth of the founder has this real dark side that can cut into your, you start to feel like, well, if I must be failing as a founder, right?
Right.
So, and which is not true necessarily. So awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'm really glad to hear that you're moving forward through adversity and becoming this, like, things are getting better and better at Fave. So let's talk for a second about, why we're here, which is the Narwhal competition. I was wondering if you could share some of your experiences as pitching. I mean, as I mentioned when I introduced you, this was one of the first sort of public reveals of the platform. How did that feel? What kind, how did the feedback help you or not? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was a pivotal moment, this pitch competition, because it was, as we said, the first time where I talked about choir at that time, it was called. And I mean, I didn't even want to at first. It was like, wait, I don't know if I should do this. Like, it's not ready yet, and got the encouragement to do it. Came on, I guess, a virtual stage, as we've all related to, poured my heart out. And the feedback from the chat was things that I still remember today, seeing something pop up and how people were interpreting what I was saying and putting it in not my like storytelling mode, which I was doing for the pitch, but hearing how they interpret it as business opportunities, deals they wanted to strike. All of this was super helpful, and to hone in on who was saying that and why they were saying it. And I really took the comments as like strategy to understand how people would interpret the concept. The people who I met in doing that, obviously following up with those people, some of those people are in the chat now, right? Kelly is here, even Dimitri, even the judges, right? Like still talk to them almost daily, right? They're still deep in the strategy of Fave, met through this competition. And I think it was just one of those times where you have, as a founder, this belief that the world should be a certain way. You are confused why the world isn't that way, and you want to translate that, right? And so you, again, kind of pour your heart out into this, but to see people's reaction and interpretation of it was super rewarding. And I would say that was the coolest thing to come of it, outside of all of the connections made, right?
I love that you dived in just a second before you thought you were ready.
I wouldn't have standing at
the edge of the pool, is going to be cold.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I'm a sole founder, but I was the only person working on Fave. I think a few weeks later, I said, okay, I think this is going somewhere. Maybe I need to have somebody. It was a vision, right? That was materializing, where I was trying to find some developer to like build it out. But if I didn't get that encouragement, it would have probably still been in my back pocket as some idea to do one day. But because it came here and made it real for me, it set everything off without question.
Amazing. So any advice for folks, especially people who may be at that, I may be just a touch too early phase,
Yeah.
how to approach jumping into a pitch competition like this? What would you have told yourself back then?
Yeah, I mean, what you get intimidated by at that stage is thinking that nothing is ready. I'm sure every founder 5 years in, no one thinks they're ready, right? It's always, oh, let me just wait for this next deal. Let me just wait for so you will never feel ready. And especially at the point where, let's say some founders may not even have an incorporation, right? Or they haven't talked to anybody else about it, or et cetera, et cetera. The best thing you can do is use this as a feedback, a user research, a panel, and get the way that you're telling the story as this kind of muscle that you build, right? Again, get the feedback and hear what people are hearing when you think you know it. Again, this is obvious to you, but if it's not obvious to others, you get that practice. And just start, right? And just see how you feel when you say it. It is a muscle that you have to build. So I very much agree, just try to do it as much as possible. But there's no right moment or gut feeling or anything. This is the time. You have to just be opportunistic with these kinds of things. And you will, even if you feel the pitch itself didn't go well, or you don't win the competition or whatever, the experience and the people that you meet along the way are well worth every second of it. So don't hesitate if you are. This is very worth it.
So, and to close things out, let's just see if you could again give one piece of advice to everyone here, especially knowing how complicated some of the bigger picture dynamics that are shaping what startups can and can't do right now, or the headwinds they may be facing. Let's put it that way. What's something you want to, besides just like stick with it and learn from adversity, are there other more sort of practical, tactical things you wish you could share with everybody?
Yeah, I mean, a ton. I would
it's a whole book right there.
Yeah, this industry is very unique that we're in, as has been pointed out. And one clear thing that I learned is that, you will, especially in a pitch competition, like you will be able to share your perspective of your vision for sure. But in order to actually go beyond people just like loving you and liking your story and understanding it, to make it real and to make actual deals and to like secure partnerships and to turn this into a business and not just a vision, you have to share that same story through the language that they speak and through the way that it makes sense for them. So kind of think about ways of course, how to take your business and make how you say it makes sense. But just like we talked about the audience segmentation, know who you're talking to and know the way that they would think your business makes sense and say that's how you take it from like a vision, congratulations, this to actually making something real. So always hone in on who you're talking to, just like you would for any product, and really nail that in, because otherwise you will just get a bunch of fluff and people high-fiving you. But the industry is not willing to change unless it's forced or it's something that they cannot say no to. And if you speak money, if you speak streaming, and you find a way to have your business, even if totally off, like my business is fandom, right? Like it doesn't equal the kind of thing that people are thinking that they can do with fandom today, right? I'm trying to change the way they do it. You have to make it make sense in the terms that they're dealing with in their meetings with their stakeholders every single day, or else it will just be a bunch of fun meetings. So that's the practical advice I would give.
Fantastic. That is such great advice, Jacquelle. All right. And now for more advice from Bill Campbell. Hey, Bill.
Hi there.
Thanks for joining us today. So I'm going to introduce Bill to all y'all who don't know him. He is an advisor and the founder and CEO of Barefoot Media LLC, a consulting firm focused on assisting startups with digital strategy, business and financial modeling, content licensing and negotiations, and fundraising. Whew, that's a lot. a lot of complicated stuff. So I'm looking forward to what you have to say. Barefoot's clients extend across a wide range of verticals, including digital music, streaming video, social media, online fitness, digital avatars, VR, AI, film, and television. So with all of that wide and yet deep expertise, Bill, I'm really glad that you're here with our future Narwhals. And I'm wondering, what is some advice that you can give startups in this current somewhat challenging or daunting investment market. What are some things people can do right now, even if they're very early stage, to set themselves up for future success?
Yeah, it's a great question, and nice to be here, and thank you for having me. So yeah, when I left the music industry to go on the other side of the table and help early stage startups, what attracted me most was not only the opportunity to be equity owner and help those companies with music licensing and strategy and growth. It was really about the energy that I felt from those founders that were coming in the door at Sony or Universal, wherever I was at the time. And that was exciting to me. And I thought to myself, I could sit here and continue to do the same licenses over and over again, or I could sit on that other side and I could actually be an entrepreneur, but help multiple companies and add more value to the industry by doing so. So I quickly learned that, being a founder is a full-time fundraising job. In addition to product development, you have to raise money constantly. And no matter what stage you're in, you're always in front of investors, you're always pitching, you're always trying to, convince them to give you that next check. And so what I found was the ones that were the most successful never gave up, or they pivoted. And they really understood their total addressable market. They really understood specifically what problem they were solving in the marketplace. And the ones that said we had no competition, I would say, I think you need to rethink that, because everybody's got competition. And you may not even think that that particular company is your competition now, but they will be, or they might be in the future. So the other thing and piece of advice I would give to most of them is be really careful on your valuation. This climate right now is cloudy with a chance of tornadoes. It's, people are very frugal with their checks right now. They are not interested in overblown valuations. And a lot of the clients that I see have these valuations that wouldn't make any sense for an early stage investor or even a mid-stage investor to go into, because they wouldn't get the ROI on their money that they're looking for. So that's a piece of advice I would give. The other, I think the most valuable thing that I had heard through a number of different venture firms and private equity firms and family offices that I work with, is there actually a problem that was at a big company, but the big company wouldn't put the resources against that problem that you were at that big company are now taking out and trying to solve? That's one example. The other example is, are those founders who have successfully exited businesses before? And then the third criteria typically is, boy, is this a problem that is begging for a solution, and these guys seem to really have it. So that's kind of a starting thought process on how to help early stage founders think about their business.
Great. And so you see a lot of different companies, and you talk to a lot of startups, both as clients and just in the general ecosystem. I'm wondering if you've seen any trends among music tech companies that you're particularly excited about. How are things evolving? What are some ideas that you wish people would explore more? What are some things you're a little bit skeptical about?
I mean, I'm not skeptical about any of it, because I think that even if it's early stage, whether it's blockchain, Web3, NFTs, I don't think those are going away. I think they're here. I just think that the earlier iterations of those got caught up with a crypto, inflation, and I think that I'm still a firm believer in Bitcoin and blockchain, and Web3 is here to stay. There's no question about that. I think it's really a dissemination of wallet and being able to make sure that people are feeling comfortable about having crypto, and maybe not necessarily thinking of it as a stored value that they can continue to keep and look at the value of that go up. But maybe it's the kind of thing that transactionally it makes sense to use crypto versus fiat, and I think that's going to be interesting to watch. But the trends that I'm really interested in are kind of like what Xann is doing with music and with health. We just worked with a company that is now one of the first companies that got FDA approval for using music as a prescription, and doctors can actually write a prescription for using music now. That's the kind of stuff that gets me excited. And so I look at health and wellness as a vertical that I'm really excited about. I look at AI as an opportunity and a challenge to the industry. And I think that there are ways for it to be utilized, both from an artist standpoint as well as from a record company standpoint, that make a lot of sense. Listen, I came from major labels, and the first job that I had at Sony was an anti-piracy czar. So I was going after pirates around the world and going after them, right? So I think that there's a knee-jerk reaction to enforce, and I think enforcement is a necessary part of the equation, but it can't be the only part of the equation. And there are plenty of artists, like Grimes included, who want to use AI, and they see the opportunity of being able to have multiple thousands of people creating copyrights, which they own a piece of, and just sit back and collect the royalties. So to me, that's a really interesting opportunity. It doesn't scare me as much as I think it would scare a company that is worried about their market share being diluted.
Cool. That's a really, really great overview. And I'm absolutely on board when it comes to the health and wellness side of things. I think it's way beyond deals like Peloton. There's so much out there that could be done with music. We do have a specific question in the chat, but I want to ask one quick question first, and that is, what would you recommend to the startups here with us today as they're preparing to, say, talk to major partners in the music business? Are there little things that they can tweak, things they should be considering that may not be top of mind? How can they set themselves up to do to be excellent negotiators and really come to the table as partners, as opposed to, just making a pitch? What advice would you give startups?
I would say be prepared when you walk into that first meeting. And by that, I mean, know what copyright is, right? Know the difference between a sound recording copyright and a music publishing copyright, and the various rights grants is part of that. Know how your particular platform is going to use music and what rights you might need even before you go in there. And I would also say, because there is a lack of resources in the industry in terms of doing deals, there are only a finite number of deals that can get done on a month or a semi-annual or an annual basis. And so you want to make sure that your deal is front and center. There's a couple of ways of doing that, making sure that your deal is so good and so interesting that they can't ignore it, or working with trusted advisors like myself, who might be able to get you in there and actually get you front and center and have those discussions. But be prepared with the right overview materials, the right financial forecasts, the right understanding of what the ask is from them, because that's kind of part of the issue. It's like you just want to go in there with a fuzzy business model, and you may use music like this, you may use it like this, not really sure yet. Be very clear about what your asks are, and then they'll be clear in terms of their response.
Cool. So I'm going to ask a question from the chat. We have a question from David Blundell, who is a company that is a blockchain provider that provides business owners with a private blockchain solution in days or weeks, not months or years, when compared to Ethereum, Polygon, or some of the other chains out there. They're struggling to really get some traction with investors. Is this sort of the nature of where we are at the moment? Is this like a timing thing? What, in your perspective, what could a blockchain based company do right now to make those conversations a little bit more successful?
Don't talk about blockchain.
It's kind of hard when you're a blockchain provider, but there's got to be another way,
use
right?
Blockchain. Absolutely use blockchain. Absolutely use smart contracts, but don't focus on it, right? Because it scares a lot of investors. Like right now, with inflation, the instability abroad, investors are really cautious with their money. They attach blockchain for whatever reason, wrongly, I would argue, to crypto. And so, you'll see crypto coming back, by the way. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I just wouldn't lead with it. I've actually had this conversation with a client who was leading with the fact that we're using blockchain, it's smart contract. Keep in mind, you're talking to an industry who could care less about blockchain in terms of they already have a legacy contract system. To change that system out with brand new contracts and smart contracts and put it on the chain is a Herculean effort. So try to take an approach that will get you into that industry, will get use cases and tests as part of that, but don't try to change an industry overnight. It's like boiling the ocean.
That's excellent advice. One more quick question from William Gary. And I may rephrase it just slightly, William, sorry to take that liberty, but I think, one thing that William is getting at, he's asking, is Web3 scalable enough to really reach the critical mass necessary to scale for the music industry? A valid question. And I in some ways, I'd love to rephrase that question to, does it have to be on the blockchain, right? And a lot of times people come to, I've noticed there's a lot of great innovation coming through Web3, but they're talking about things like community, and it doesn't necessarily have to be on the blockchain, or things like digital identity have to be on the blockchain. So how do you advise startups and, like, who may have been inspired by some of blockchain's capabilities? What, is that more of a technical question that sort of lies outside of your purview, or how are you advising people on that front of whether to dive into Web3 or keep it more Web2 but have the same sort of use case?
In my mind, and it may be incorrect on this, and there's an expert named Vicky Nauman who is like the pro at Web3. But my understanding of Web3 is really that it is about, taking that paradigm of big companies taking content that is created by others and exploiting that content and then monetizing it, and maybe sharing a small amount in that with the creators. In a creator community, in a Web3 kind of community, it shifts the power balance away from the bigger platforms and lets data and also that ability to earn, the power gets put into the individual creator's hands, right? And that is a very interesting way to own your own data, to be able to monetize that data and actually control your own destiny. The mechanics of being able to do that are blockchain and smart contracts and the underlying underpinnings of that that platform capability. But to me, you don't necessarily have to have the Web3 component. It definitely makes it easier, and it's much more transparent, and it's much harder to cheat when you have that.
Great. Thanks so much, Bill, for your advice and for your time. I am going to hand things over to my colleague, Eleanor Rust, who will give our startup friends an introduction, what to expect when you're narwhaling.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody who spoke today. I found it super exciting. Thanks, Jessica, Xann, Jacquelle, and Bill. So I'm here to talk to you with more details about Swimming with Narwhals, our Music Tectonics startup pitch competition. And I am going to run through some details pretty fast. So I just want to direct you to the Music Tectonics website for everything I am going to say today and more. And hopefully one of my colleagues will drop that in the chat. And hopefully we'll have some time to answer your questions. So please drop those in the chat as well. So first things first, applications are now open as of today. They close August 8th, and they are a simple form linked through our website. All we're asking for is your contact information and a little bit about your startup, a website, a little bit about what your startup does and how you differentiate. So I do want to go through eligibility requirements. They have changed a little bit in different editions of the competition. In this year, the only application fee is to purchase at least one conference badge. We've made this conference really great for startups, so we really wanted to link participation in the conference with participation in the competition. Early bird rate badges are available through August 15th at just $249. And that gets you access to an online pre-conference on September 13th and the conference in person in October in Santa Monica. Other eligibility requirements, they're very simple and broad. We need you to work in any area of music innovation. We consider that very broadly. We ask that you be less than 5 years, your startup be less than 5 years old. Sorry, I realized that sounded a little weird to say you have to be less than 5 years old. And in this edition, we're asking that you have a working demo of a product, service, or platform, or a finished product. And that's just to make sure the playing field is as even as we can make it. Now, if that conference badge is a barrier to you attending the conference, we do have 3 badge scholarships available. And we're going to give preference for those scholarships to founders from groups who have been historically excluded from music and tech leadership, because it's important to all of us at Music Tectonics that we contribute to equity. All right, let's run really quickly through the timeline for the competition. As I mentioned, Applications are open now and close on August 8th. Those applications will go to a panel of investors and entrepreneurs, and they're going to evaluate your application in terms of like originality, most likely to succeed, and product market fit. They're experienced investors and entrepreneurs, so they've got their eye on the current music tech landscape. On September 13th, the 10 semifinalists that those judges select will pitch at Music Tectonics online pre-conference, and a jury there will select 4 finalists. And that brings us to the main conference event. And here I want to discuss some of the things that every applicant can participate in, as well as what finalists can do at the in-person conference. So on October 24th, the first day of the conference, we kick things off at the Santa Monica Pier Carousel with a startup demo day around the carousel. This was a really fun event that we debuted last year for our, triumphant return to totally in-person events. We had demo tables all over the room where attendees could visit startups and experience everything they had to offer. So this year, finalists will be demoing their products so everyone could get to know them. Semi-finalists have the top priority to join them, and then every space that remains will bring in Narwhal applicants. We can't unfortunately have every single applicant demo there, but we strive to get as many as we can. It's super fun. Now on October 25th, this is our most traditional conference day. Panels will take place in the Annenberg Beach House in Santa Monica, and that's where you'll have a great chance to meet both speakers and attendees who are potential partners, potential clients, customers, and investors. But also finalists will be pitching. 4 finalists will pitch at the conference. Last year, this was our most popular session of the year. It was tons of great energy. The jury got a little crazy pants. That's just kind of our style. And I just wanted to recognize all of our finalists last year. We have Dre Wallace from Opener, Jessica from Audioshake, you met earlier, Anthony from Toonie, and Mark of Victors. They did a fantastic job pitching, and they all got tiny trophies. Also a little crazy pants. So the next day, sorry, I'm going backwards. The final day of our conference, October 26th, we start the day at a Santa Monica co-work space, and that's where we will announce a jury choice winner and an audience choice winner. Now, the past 2 years, those have been the same person. Both Xann, Schwinn, and Jessica Powell swept the jury and the audience choice awards. And I love this picture of Jessica accepting her Narwhal trophy. But after we make that announcement and leave Expert Dojo, we'll be moving to Universal Music Group Santa Monica offices for a startup boot camp. Last year's event, I think Bill was involved with that last year. That was a really incredible event. Just startups were invited to participate, and Bill Gagnon and Christina Pimentel of UNG's Digital Innovations Group made an amazing, intensive, but intimate experience. Here's just half of the startups that participated. It was a wild ride and full of great information and great networking. And we're going to do something very similar this year. All right, that was a ton of information. Like I said, all of it and more is at our website, musictectonics.com. And I haven't been able to track the chat because I got many tabs. But yeah, maybe Travis, could you help me answer any questions that are there?
Yeah, a lot of questions are technical in the chat right now for Jessica. It looks like I'm not seeing a whole lot of questions about.
Well,
and Shaylee did. I'm sorry to interrupt. Shaylee did drop the link to Music Tectonics and the pitch competition there, so you can find that in the chat if you guys haven't already.
Awesome, fantastic. Yeah, we really hope to see you there. I love getting startups involved with the competition and the conference. You bring so much energy and innovation and future thinking. Love it.
Awesome. Thanks, Eleanor.
Travis, do you want to?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, if no one has any more questions, sorry, I was leaving that for you. But yeah, if no one has any more questions or anything, just want to say thank you guys so much again for attending this seismic activity. Feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn or my email I left, just travis@rockpaperscissors.biz, or you can also email Eleanor@rockpaperscissors.biz if you have any questions regarding the conference, or Shaylee at rockpaperscissors.biz. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
I do want to mention actually that we do not have a seismic activity online event in August. We're taking a holiday break. And we have lots to get ready for the conference. But so our next online event will be September 13th, the Music Tectonics pre-conference, and that is open to all conference badge holders. And in addition to the semi-final round of the pitch competition, Sheila is working on some killer programming that we will be announcing in just a little bit. We can't wait. In addition to the semifinals, it's going to be a great afternoon, morning, evening, late night, depending on your time zone.
Awesome. Thanks again.